Joey and I had planned to go camping in the evening. We loved places like this. Fresh air, the silence of nature, and an escape from the city's noise always felt refreshing. Joey told me he would be a bit late, so I decided to go ahead. I wanted to record the sounds of birds before it got too dark. I parked my car near the forest and started walking. The sun was beginning to set, but I could still see my surroundings clearly. Moving slowly through the trees, I used my phone to capture the birds' melodies. Everything was calm and normal. Then suddenly, a gunshot. The sound was so close that I froze in place. Hunting was forbidden in this forest. Besides, this didn't sound like an ordinary hunting rifle. It was something heavier, something more powerful. The birds scattered instantly, branches cracked, and the peaceful silence was replaced by chaos. Then, within seconds, everything went quiet again. I felt uneasy, but I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. As night fell, I returned to my campsite and lit a fire. Joey still hadn't arrived. Hours passed. It was now close to 11 p.m. The darkness was complete, and Joey was still missing. I sent him a message and called his phone. No answer. Just then, the same gunshot echoed again from deep within the forest. This time, it was followed by a faint scream. The scream wasn't too far away, and a strange sense of dread crept over me. Where was Joey? And could that scream have belonged to him? It was already past midnight. I had realized that Joey wasn't coming, but leaving the forest alone at this hour was too dangerous. The surroundings were completely covered in darkness, with only the weak glow of the fire providing a little light. And then, another gunshot rang out. This time it was even closer. It was followed by a scream echoing from the darkness. My heart pounded in my chest. It was a human scream, but it sounded so agonizing and strange, as if there was something horrifying hidden within it. Gathering my courage, I started moving in the direction of the sound. The crunching of dry branches beneath my feet echoed unnaturally loud in the night silence. I finally approached the source of the sound, and when I saw what lay before me, my breath caught in my throat. A deer lay on the ground, but it didn't just have a gunshot wound. Something had torn it apart. Parts of its skin had been ripped off, and its internal organs were spilling out. The most disturbing thing was that it didn't seem like an animal had done this for food. It was as if someone had done it just to inflict pain and destruction. I took a step back in horror. At that moment, I lifted my head and, deep in the forest, between the trees, someone was watching me. I froze. The figure stood there, hidden in the darkness, staring at me. At first, I thought it might be Joey, but no. Something was off. "Who's there?" My voice shook. No answer. But the figure started slowly stepping toward me. As it moved into the dim light, I could make out its face slightly. Its eyes glowed strangely in the darkness. Its clothes were torn, and its hands were covered in blood. The most terrifying part? It was dragging the body of another animal, perhaps a fox, behind it. I was frozen in place. The figure stood still, just staring at me. Then, it did something so horrifying that a wave of cold fear washed over me. It lifted the animal's body and started tearing into it with its teeth. The moment I saw this, my breath stopped. Without wasting another second, I turned and ran as fast as I could. Behind me, I could hear footsteps. It was following me. I reached the campsite and frantically turned around. No one was there. Everything was silent again. But this silence felt wrong. The forest was still hiding its terrible secret. Spending another night in this forest was impossible. I pulled out my phone and called Joey. The ringtone echoed in my ears, but he didn't answer. And then, The ringtone played, from the bushes nearby. A chill ran down my spine. Joey was here? Or how could his phone be ringing from those bushes? I shone my flashlight in that direction, but nothing was visible. The ringtone continued playing. Then, suddenly, it stopped, and once again, an eerie silence filled the air. Staying here could mean death. Without waiting another second, I sprinted out of the forest. I hadn't ended the call, so as I ran, I could still hear the faint sound of the ringing behind me. Branches whipped against my face, my feet stumbled over rocks, and every moment, I felt like something would grab me from behind. Finally, as I neared the forest's edge, the footsteps behind me stopped. I took a deep breath and turned around. He was standing there, deep in the forest, hidden within the darkness. I couldn't see his face clearly, but he slowly raised his hand and waved at me. What did it mean? Was he watching me? Or was he telling me to come back? Without wasting a second, I turned and kept running. When I finally reached the road, I jumped into my car and locked the doors. I switched on the headlights and took one last look at the forest. He was gone. After that night, I never heard from Joey again. I never found out where he was or what happened to him. But sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I hear a familiar ringtone echoing in my ears. My 3 friends and I were going to leave this beautiful city in a few days. We had so many memories here. The most unforgettable ones were our camping adventures together. To relive that feeling one last time, we decided to go on one final camping trip. We planned to set out at 7 p.m. the next evening. Finally, the time arrived. When I reached the campsite, my friends were already there. We were all fully prepared. Each of us had a specific task to handle. As always, gathering firewood was my responsibility. The others started setting up the tents and preparing food. I headed into the forest. The silence was unsettling, broken only by the crunch of dry twigs beneath my feet and the whistling of the wind through the trees. As I was collecting wood, I noticed a shadow behind a tree. I immediately turned to look, but there was no one there. I told myself it must have been my imagination. Maybe I was just tired. After gathering some more wood, I returned to the campsite. But as soon as I arrived, I saw something strange. Everyone was already asleep. The fire was burning brightly, and there was a pile of firewood next to it. But that didn't make sense. I was the only one who had gone to collect wood. I glanced at my friends' tents. Everything seemed normal. But then I noticed something that sent a chill down my spine. There was an extra tent. There were only 4 of us, yet now there were 5 tents. I tried to wake my friends up and ask them about it, but they were all in a deep sleep. Had they built the fire after I left? Maybe. But then, who had set up the extra tent? A feeling of unease crept over me. I decided to sleep, hoping the morning would bring clarity. But I had no idea that this would be the most terrifying night of my life. Even though I tried to close my eyes, an uneasy feeling lingered inside me. The extra tent I had seen when I returned to the campsite was still on my mind. When had it been set up? Who did it belong to? Maybe one of my friends was playing a prank. But the firewood next to the campfire was also strange. After all, I was the only one who had gone to collect wood. I took a deep breath to calm myself. Maybe I was just exhausted, and my mind was playing tricks on me. My tired body finally gave in, and I drifted off to sleep. I don't know how long I slept, but suddenly, I woke up in the middle of the night. At first, I couldn't tell what had disturbed me. My tent was pitch black. Outside, only the faint whisper of the wind through the forest could be heard. Then, I heard it again. The slow, deliberate sound of a zipper being pulled open, then closed. The sound was coming from right next to me. The strange, extra tent. A chill ran down my spine. Maybe it was one of my friends. But these sounds, they were unsettling. The zipper would slowly open, then suddenly snap shut. It was as if someone inside was hesitating, unsure whether to step out or stay hidden. Then, a sound that made my stomach drop. Crying. It sounded like a child, sobbing softly. The sobs were so real, so full of despair that I instinctively felt my chest tighten. "Who's there?" I whispered, my voice shaking. The crying stopped immediately. A deep silence followed. Then, a quiet, eerie laughter echoed from the dark tent. The sound rippled through the air and faded away. Shaking, I reached for my tent's zipper and unzipped it just a little, just enough to see the strange tent beside mine. Its entrance was shut, but I couldn't look away. For a brief second, I swear I saw the fabric move, as if someone inside was shifting, watching me. And then, I heard it. A whisper. It was my name. The voice was so close, too close. It was as if someone was crouching just outside my tent, whispering my name. I froze, barely breathing. Then, it whispered another name. One of my friends. Then another. And another. One by one, all four of our names were whispered in that chilling, breathy voice. Then, just as suddenly, the whisper stopped. For a few seconds, there was nothing but pure, dead silence. Then I heard a new sound. 6. A hoarse, rasping voice slowly started counting. 6 again. A 10-second pause. Again. 6. It repeated 3 times. A cold sweat broke out on my skin. It felt like a ritual, like some kind of message. But why? I was frozen in place. My mind could only think one thing. That tent does not belong here. It should not be here. Trembling, I squeezed my eyes shut and forced myself to sleep, no matter what. But I could still feel it. Something inside that tent was watching me. Something was there, with us. Just as I was slipping into unconsciousness, I heard one last thing. Leave. The voice was low, rasping, almost guttural, as if it was forcing itself to push out the words. I bolted awake. The sun was rising. Everything looked normal. My friends were already up, laughing and preparing breakfast. I frantically looked around. The tent was gone. The extra tent, the one that had appeared in the night, had vanished without a trace. Shaking, I turned to my friends. "That tent, the voices," I started. They looked at me confused. "What tent? What are you talking about? We only had 4 tents, just like always." My blood ran cold. "But you didn't hear anything last night?" They exchanged glances before chuckling. "You must have been dreaming, man." Everything was normal, but I knew it wasn't a dream. I had heard it. I had seen it. I had felt it. Something had been there with us. Something had let only me notice it. But this wasn't the end. We left the campsite. Everything seemed normal again. But deep inside, I had a lingering sense of unease. And in the following weeks, I realized that night wasn't just some nightmare. Because from that day on, nothing went right. Our plans to leave the city all fell apart. None of us managed to leave. It was as if something was keeping us here. And worst of all, one of my friends died in a plane crash a few months later. And he was the one whose name had been whispered the most that night. Even now, I still wonder, what was inside that tent? And who, or what, was calling to us?